Do you know people who suffer from male pattern baldness? I had an uncle who, at 19, had pretty much lost all of the hair on the top of his head. He was the only individual on either side of my family in that generation who ended up losing hair. My dad and my uncle kept their heads hair, I mean, full heads of hair, till they were dead. And my other uncles on the other side of the family, well, God bless one of them, he's still with us. He's never worn his hair very long. It's never been more than about half an inch, but he still got a full head of hair. He's about 80 years old. Seems to be doing just fine. Yet, for some reason, my Uncle Frank, he got stuck with the short end of things. But some people don't have a problem with people who are losing their hair. Uh, Men worry about it. But over the years, I can remember women who would watch Harry Smith or Terry Bradshaw on TV and tell me, oh, those guys are really good looking. And the tops of their heads, I mean, they look like light bulbs. But women love them. So, guys, if you're losing your hair, it's not a serious problem. Why am I bringing this up? Well, I want to mention something about a consultant who I happened to see on a clip from MSDNC, and he claims to be a Republican. His name is Rick Wilson. Rick Wilson is follically challenged. We'll get to that in just a moment. It's 28. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 8 minutes after 9 o'clock. So this fellow, Rick Wilson, first of all, whenever someone claims to be a Republican consultant and you see them on MSDNC, you've got to ask a serious question about why they're over there cross-tabling with the enemy, which he's doing. He's appearing on a show called All In with Chris Hayes. Chris Hayes, a manly man himself. And they're having a conversation about Donald Trump. And apparently this guy, Rick Wilson, he does not like Trump. Does not like him. No whatsoever. Do not like him. He's answering a question from Chris Hayes about Trump's supporters. And listen to what this guy has to say.
The screamers and the crazy people on the alt-right, as they call it, who love Donald Trump, who have plenty of Hitler iconography in their Twitter icons and
they
things.
They sure do. I can back that up.
Donald Trump is the greatest thing. Oh, it's something. But the fact of the matter is most of them are childless single men who masturbate to anime. They're not real political players. These are not people who matter in the overall course of humanity.
Excuse me, but how did you lose the hair on the top of your head? Are there certain practices of your own that perhaps caused that male pattern baldness? I'm just saying it might be a question people would ask of you. And perhaps the insides of your head have been made soft because of self-abuse. So, and then they bring up the, Hitler iconography on their Twitter accounts. What does that mean? Bernie Sanders, they walk around with a hammer and a sickle, don't they? And sing the Communist Internationale or something along those lines. Yeah, all of the maple saps up in Vermont, they all know the words to this, too. And yet they sit here and say if you support Donald Trump, you're a Nazi and you're a masturbator. What? I mean, who is paying this guy's salary? Let's see. 3 letters. J-E-B. Yeah, that's it. 11 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning. The local number, 736-0300. If you're looking to reach the program, give us a shout, 736-0300. My email address, bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. Of course, media itself is so genuinely opposed, even the entertainment media, to any Republican, no matter if it's Donald Trump or Jeb Bush or Kasich or Christie or Cruz or Paul. They're never going to get a fair shake. But to call this guy a GOP strategist, I'd never heard of him. You just wonder who these people are and how they show up on these programs, where they find them. I'll bet this guy is actually a freelancer who's available to whoever the highest bidder happens to be. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. Bill, yesterday I had a heads up from Detroit, Michigan about the article in the WorldNet Daily about Joe Paney hiring these, not illegals, but immigrants. But in the same article, the immigrants are causing all kinds of problems that never existed before. The Germans had to advise the people from other cultures not to defecate in the showers.
Well, thank you for the call. I had someone tell me one time that the people in that part of the world, in some cave in Afghanistan, you don't really have access to toilet paper. Or out in the backwoods of Syria. Well, they don't really have woods. It's more desert, isn't it? Probably looks a lot like it does here. So if you were sitting out in the South Hills right now and you really had an urge for number two and you didn't have any toilet paper, well, you know how those people, they don't have any choice. Yeah, it's a filthy way to live, but they're not used to what we do. A friend of mine, Phil Kent, wrote a book a few years ago called The Dark Side of Liberalism. And his focus really was illegal immigration. And he tells the story about in his home city of Atlanta, they had a group of Somali refugees. They resettled them in an apartment, but no one told them how that stove thing worked or what that oven thing was all about. They'd never seen one. It's just a big box sitting in a room in the house. So when it came time for dinner, they built a cook fire in the middle of the living room floor. They burned down the whole Goldang apartment complex. We have another caller joining us. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story.
Hi, Bill. Hey, I was just listening to your show here, and they were talking about the Germans and the people in the showers. I have a friend lives down in Amarillo, Texas, and he said his pastor at his church has a couple of rentals, and the government came to him, won't know if he'd allow them to, or if they could rent the buildings and put those refugees in there. And of course he did. And he said within 2 weeks, they had ripped all the carpet out of the house, threw it on the lawn, and that they were not using the toilets, but they were using one corner of the room to take care of that kind of business.
Well, and again, they're not trying to be mean. They just don't know any better, right?
It's it. They've never been, yeah. That's what they did at home, so why not do it here? Yeah, right.
Well, thank you for the call. When the Russians came into Germany at the end of World War II, Russian troops were sweeping across Germany and laying waste to the country. They felt they had reason to do it because the Germans had been laying waste to their country before that, the Russians' country. When they started breaking into people's homes, and they'd see these things that they'd walk over and there'd be this switch, and you'd hit the switch, and all of a sudden all this water would swirl around a bowl and go down, and then the bowl would refill. And the Russians thought they were potato washers, and the Russians ate a lot of potatoes. So the Russians started ripping these things out from the floor and shipping them back home to Mother Russia or Ukraine or whatever, because Soviet Union at the time, whatever republic the troops happened to hail from. They were shipping them home. The Russians thought the toilets were potato washers. Why? Because a Russian had no dang idea what a toilet was at the time. Some people would say they still don't. 9:15, Bill Colley with you. Well, that's why they're full of it. 9:15, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 28. Mentioning entertainment media. If you're a Republican and you don't go on their shows and talk about how we can spend our country into oblivion, you're a bad guy or girl in the case of Sarah Palin. Late night comics tearing into Palin last night.
Nothing, but nothing will ever stop this guy. He's way ahead in the polls. He's getting all the endorsements, and I'm not surprised because there is no one on earth like Donald Trump. Well, except maybe one person.
Sarah Palin gave a 20-minute speech to endorse Donald Trump for president.
Sarah Palin, did you see this yesterday, Sarah Palin? Oh, you saw it. Oh, good.
Palin described Trump as a great leader, while Trump described being quiet for 20 minutes as the most painful experience of his life.
Critics are calling Sarah Palin's endorsement speech of Donald Trump bizarre, meandering, and mystifying.
What's interesting is that in 100 years, students will have to memorize that speech.
This is a quote. How about the rest of us, right-winging, bitter clinging, proud clingers of our guns, our God, and our religions?
Sarah Palin just guaranteed Trump the evangelical vote because I think she was speaking in tongues.
In other words, she's still got it.
So here we have all these emails that have been released this week from Hillary Clinton, where, of course, she was illegally storing classified information and information that is even classified beyond classified. How many late-night comics are talking about that? Heck, the New York Times barely is covering that story. Over at ABC, CBS, NBC, MSDNC, and CNN for Clinton News Network, barely touching that story. 4 dead bodies from Benghazi. No one wants to talk about that, even though we know more now with that film being released about what really happened than ever before. And yet it's all Sarah Palin. Ha, 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 Sarah Palin. Ha, 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 ha. Donald Trump. You can hear these people. They're just, they don't need to do that other thing that guy accused Trump supporters of. They get there just giggling about the fact that they don't like Republicans. And yet they completely ignore the fact that the presumptive, as they call her, the presumptive Democrat Party nominee is not only America's biggest bald-faced liar, but is a criminal and has covered up crimes. They're going to demote post-retirement David Petraeus, and yet she's going to skate. And she, well, a year from today, could be sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, so she and her husband can once again steal all of the silverware. 9:17. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Kimberly Guilfoyle, not only is she the most beautiful woman in the world, formerly a prosecutor from California, now a co-host on the Fox 5, talking about this very situation.
This is such a double standard and such hypocrisy that she's getting a pass once again. There's some weird spell that the Clintons put people under, and it just doesn't matter. They're like 3-strike offenders, but it doesn't matter. Give them a pass. I mean, there should be serious consequences. How is it that now this person is going to be rewarded by potentially being president of the United States of America, the greatest country in the world, commander-in-chief of our armed forces? It's bad enough what happened to Benghazi. It's bad enough the influence peddling with the Clinton Foundation, and now this is it. This is enough with what happened with the emails. She deliberately did this. She and her team. There is quite substantial evidence to point to this. Now it's the call of DOJ and FBI. What are you going to do about it?
When Grant Loebs was in the studio the other day, and of course you may have missed me commenting about it yesterday, and we not only do the show, but we talk a lot during the breaks about various issues that are going on. He believes that there will be enough evidence to indict Hillary Clinton. But he says that the White House, that is President Obama and his Iranian associate Valerie Jarrett, will squash that. And there will be no indictment over at the Justice Department of Hillary Clinton. Now, that could be the final positive in all of this, or the only positive in all of this, if they go ahead and they do it, and it's that blatantly political against all of the evidence. You could see any Republican win 46, 47, maybe 48 states this fall because of the blatant criminality. But then again, to a liberal voter, what doesn't matter anything, right? They don't have any morals in the first place. 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. If they did, they wouldn't be liberals. 30 right now. Hey, warmest temperature of our morning. On our way, we'll skyrocket up through the 30s today. Might even make it to 38, 39 before it's all over. Gosh, you got to love this weather. Same thing every day.